that changed the entire trajectory of Leonard's life. One incident, and that was this incident right here. On August 30th, 1945, Leonard had a Foo Fighters sighting from inside of a twin-engine C-47 while traveling from Okinawa to Iwo Jima. So here he is in this plane, and there was a group of Foo Fighters that pulled up right next to the fuselage. One of the engines on the twin-engine aircraft failed. They thought they were going to have to ditch into the ocean. Both Foo Fighters peeled away, engine came back on, and they landed safely in Iwo Jima. But that stuck in his mind his entire life. It never left him. That really made a big impression on Leonard. So here is the Newcastle Sun, January 3rd, 1945. Foo Fighters are latest. Pilots flying over Germany at night report that strange balls of fire are following them around on their missions. They have christened these strange phenomenon Foo Fighters. So these are newspaper clippings. Allied B-17s over Berlin back in 1944 encountered these Foo Fighters. They would circle the squadron and then they would peel off. Now that also happened to the B-24 Liberator pilots, and it also happened in the Pacific Theater with the B-29 pilots. So it wasn't just a Germany type phenomenon. It happened in the Pacific Theater as well. This is Cincinnati Enquirer, July 19th, 1993. Author continues quest for truth about UFOs. And it says, what I've collected is the biggest thing since Christ, really. Yeah, I mean, that's a bold statement. But if even one of these cases is correct, then it's a very significant item. Now, also want to mention that there were 22 bank boxes of correspondence letters, drawings, sketches, names, addresses, telephone numbers of all of firsthand witnesses that Leonard had procured. This is the kind of information that needs to go into congressional hearings, for sure. That's something we want to look at. So let me take you to the 1978 MUFON Symposium. We're going to go inside here. Here is Leonard giving his address on crash retrievals to all of the attendees at the conference. And what he delivered is this paper right here. It's a very good paper, very important. It's about 100 pages long. This is called Retrievals of the Third Kind, a case study of alleged UFOs and occupants in military custody. And in this paper, Leonard presented 12 of his firsthand military witnesses, and it was a bombshell. It was a complete revolution in this field, so very important. Now, everything that we'll be talking about today comes from this book right here. I've got a copy of it right here. A little bit difficult to see, but it's UFO Crash Retrievals, the Complete Investigation Status Reports 1 through 7 by Leonard Stringfield. So all of the crash retrievals, all of the case files, all the doctor reports are in this publication. It's highly recommended. I'm going to give you the page number and the location so you can verify this on your own. Also want to mention that within the Leonard Stringfield book, there's 119 crash retrieval cases. Within this new publication, Magic Eyes Only by my friend Ryan Wood, it says Earth's encounters with extraterrestrial technology. There's an additional 104 crash retrieval cases there. So between these books, we have a lot of good references here. Now, before we get into the cases, I want to take everyone to Las Vegas, and we're going to go into Caesar's Palace, and we're going to go to the roulette wheel. And the roulette wheel has 120 spaces on it, and we're going to put down one bet for each of Leonard's 119 crash retrieval cases. And you can kind of see here that we almost can't lose. The odds are in our favor. All we need is one of these cases to be authentic, and the whole concept of UFO crash retrieval non-existence completely falls apart. So with all the case files that we have, the odds are in our favor here. Also want to mention that in America, we have something called the First Amendment. So it's our right to free speech. It's our job to be questioning authority. And if we extrapolate what this means, it means that the Air Force does not own the assets. They don't own the runways. They don't own the aircraft. We as taxpayers own these assets. the U.S. Air Force and the United States government, they're nothing more than temporary custodians of these assets. We own these, so we have every right to question authority. Want to take you really briefly to the congressional hearings. This is July 26, 2023. We have Ryan Graves, Navy pilot, David Grush, U.S. Air Force Intel, David Fravor, Navy pilot. He's the gentleman who saw the Tic Tac with the F-18 Super Hornet. I want to drill down very quickly on what David Grush had said here, and I've got his quote. Here's what he said, quote, "I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval program." So here we have a United States Air Force intelligence officer telling us that there is a crash retrieval program that's been going on for decades here. So this is an acknowledgement, a very significant acknowledgement from a government official here. Here it says in Waterloo Region Record, July 27th, 2023, captures of UFOs as being concealed. So again, we've got another newspaper clipping regarding this UAP crash retrieval program here. Want to give credit to my good friend Rudy Gardea for doing all of the sketch work that we're going to talk about. And let's go ahead and start with the first case. So this is UFO crash retrieval 1942 at an Army base north of Georgia that even Leonard didn't know about. This is page 319 in the book. The witness served in a key civilian capacity. Now, this craft was 15 feet in diameter. It was 10 feet high. It was divided into 3 segments. There was a control room. There was a seating area. And then on the lower area, there was an entryway hatch. Now, I also want to mention that there were 4 crew members taken alive. They were 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, large black eyes, milky white skin, and they had teeth. Within the report, it also mentioned that there was hieroglyphic type writing written along the outer circumference of the craft itself and also on the inside wall of the upper dome. So let me go ahead and do a blow up here. This gives you an idea of what this may have looked like. So my thought is there has to be a team of linguistic experts and engineers trying to decipher what these symbols mean. There absolutely has to be something like that. So let me go to the next slide here, and I'm going to walk you through this facility. We're going to go up the stairs, and I'm going to take you inside this craft here. So we're walking around, and this is in an Army base north of Georgia in 1942. This is long before Roswell. You can see the hieroglyphic writing. Let me go a little bit further over here. Here you can see the hull breach on the side of the craft. So when this thing came down, it hit the side of the facility and opened up a hull breach on the side of the craft. And that's what we're looking at here. So now we're going to go upstairs, going to look inside the craft itself. This is the central divider. We'll do another slide here. Here you see the seating area. We've got some hieroglyphic writing on the inside wall. Off to the right is the control area. This is what we came up with based on the firsthand witness that had firsthand knowledge of this event. Let me zoom over here to the right side. This is the seating area. The report also mentioned that there was multiple wraparound windows on the front section of this craft as well. So what we're looking at is on the inside looking out. This is a blow up of the control area. And then this is the final control area blow up. This is the best we could come up with from the details of the firsthand witness that was there and saw this. So we want to talk about the bodies. Again, they were 5 feet tall. All of them were wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. They had oversized head, oversized eyes. They had a slit for a mouth. They had minute nose. This is our rendering here that gives you an idea of what these beings look like. Okay, next one. Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio, 1946. Now, I want to keep in mind that back in 1946, the U.S. Air Force didn't exist yet, so it was still known as Wright Field. It did not become Wright-Patterson Air Force Base until 1947. Our source is Tex Martin. He was 6 years old at the time. He was with his father, who was an avionics mechanic working at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. So we don't have to rely on the testimony of a 6-year-old boy. His father was with him in this whole event. Page 242, 243. What you're looking at here is a period correct photograph of hangar complex number 4, which has 5 bays. So the witness is with his father. They're in an adjoining cafeteria to the main hangar, and a janitor comes up to the 6-year-old boy and says, "You know what? You look like a fine young man. Why don't I buy you a soda pop?" So he asked his father if it would be okay. And this janitor handed this boy a soda pop. I'm going to go to the next slide, and you can kind of see here, here's the rough pencil sketch. And as soon as he did that, a door opened up, which gave this 6-year-old boy an inside view of the hangar. And this military personnel walked through the door as this young boy is looking inside. And what he said he saw was an 18-foot diameter dish-shaped craft on tripod landing gear. There were 2 tractor trailers there that had tarp over some of the unknown debris. And then he said that there were a minimum of 2 to 3 ET bodies, dead corpses laying on the ground. This is all roughed out here. Let me go to the next slide. So you can see we've reversed the perspective, showing you Tex Martin in the background looking in the hangar. So you can see the 2 tractor trailers, you see the sketch of the craft itself, and you've got the bodies laying on the hangar floor. This is all in rough format. So let's clean this up, and I want to give you a detailed view of what Tex Martin saw. And this is our final rendering here. This gives you an idea. So this thing was about 20 feet in diameter. It had a band wrapped around the outer circumference. It was sitting on tripod landing gear legs. There were military personnel with carbide rifles. And then in the foreground left, you've got the 3 ET bodies on stretchers. So let's see if we can make this come alive based on this drawing as a guide. Let's go to the full color rendering. And this kind of gives you more of a detailed view of what this might have looked like back in 1946 if we were there. So let's take this one step further. Let's see if we can make it even more realistic. And this is my final rendering that I came up with, just to give you an idea of what this looked like back in 1946 at Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. Now, next case, same location, same time frame. The source is a private and records management. And this is Space, the Final Frontier, page 59 by Clark McClellan. This is the cover of the book. So I just want to give you the idea of where I'm getting this information. Within this book is this sketch that was done by the witness who was there. This is his original sketch. Now, what he saw was a 15-foot diameter dish-shaped craft, 7 feet tall. Highly polished mirror reflective exterior. No visible means of propulsion, no wings, no fuselage, no ailerons, no flight controls, no rivets, no welds, no fasteners of any kind. Along the outer circumference of the craft itself, there were these rectangular windows, and this thing came from Arkansas on a railroad flat car. So it came all the way from Arkansas on a railroad flat car. They sent it to Wright Field, Dayton, Ohio. So here's my technical drawing that shows you what this craft looks like. If you look at the upper right blow up, I've peeled back the skin showing you the interior. Now, I also want to mention there was a 3-foot diameter column that went from the bottom of the craft through the center midpoint up to the top of the craft itself. One window left from center on the bottom view here, which is the front view, there's a red dot. That is the attempted point of entry that they were using to get in this craft with diamond tip drill bits. So they were desperately trying to get into this craft. Let me go to the next slide. This was the first pass color illustration, just to give you an idea. And then I'm going to go to my friend Joseph Wraith, who did a much better job. And this shows you the location of where they were trying to pierce this craft with a diamond tip drill bit with that red dot left of center. So here's the drawing right here. So the private records management, he had to deliver an important letter to a military brass personnel at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is Wright Field, 1946. He had a guard who was a friend. And when he went into this hangar, this guard said, "I have something I want to show you." So he brought him back to the hangar and showed him this craft sitting on the hangar floor. He said that there was a tarp partially folded up, laying on the floor next to the craft itself. In the foreground, there was an open toolbox with an electric drill and a diamond tip drill bit within the electric drill. And that was the scene when he got there. This is our firsthand witness, who was a private in records management. So here's our full color rendering of what this may have looked like back in 1946. So as we go through these cases, the body count goes up and the craft count goes up. Let's move on to the next slide here. So this is a letter from Nathan Twining to Air Force Brigadier General George Shulgin. This is September 23rd, 1947. And this is what this general says here. Quote, "The phenomenon reported is something real and not visionary or fictitious." So this is a gentleman who would have a need to know, absolutely have a need to know. Later on in this document, it talks about the form, fit, and function of these vehicles. It talks about the flight path of these vehicles. So here he's saying that this is not visionary or fictitious. This is a real phenomenon, and they've been capturing these vehicles here. Next one, Papagos Indian Reservation west of Globe, Arizona, 1947. Still, we're still prior to Roswell here. Location is where I've got this marker here, north of the Superstition Mountains. And our witness was in the U.S. Navy during World War II, page 93, case A10. So he's with another personnel. They're in a Jeep. They're not too far from Superstition Mountains. This is west of Globe, Arizona. And they're going down this unimproved road. It was a dirt road, kind of out in the desert here. And they were stopped by two military police that had carbide rifles. And they were challenged, told to evacuate the area immediately. They were not supposed to be there. Another 50 foot down the road off to the left was a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that came in at a 40-degree angle. There was a low-rise dome on top. There were two rings wrapped around the outer circumference of the craft itself. And then the craft had what appeared to be indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference. This was the scene. Now, I want to go to the next slide just to kind of give you an idea of what this may have looked like, not too far from the Superstition Mountains. And then we'll take it to the next slide to see if we can make this even more realistic here. And this is my best rendering that I could come up with to preserve an important part of our national history. Now, I have an interest in the craft themselves. I also have an interest in the debris in the bodies, but I want to go to the next slide here. I want to see if we have any other additional cases that can help support our crash retrieval existence here. White Sands Missile Range, July 4th, 1947. Our source is a technical sergeant, U.S. Army Air Force, page 196. So if you look at this map, the yellow section is the boundary perimeter of White Sands Missile Range. Now, when this thing came down, it was at the top section of the range. This happened at night. So when the team got there, this was what they saw. This is a 150-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. The whole scene was excruciatingly well lit. They had light alls shining on this thing. They had spotlights. They had searchlights on this. There were people with Geiger counters walking around this craft. They had people taking still photographs. If you look to the lower right, we have a person with a motion picture film camera. All of this was fully documented. Let me go to the next slide here. This gives you an idea of what this looked like. This is a massive craft, very well documented. Let me see if we can make this a little bit more realistic here. Something like this came down White Sands Missile Range. Let me do one more here just to give an idea. And this thing was completely documented. So they've got the motion picture film reel. They've got still camera photographs of this event here. So what's the actionable item? Since still photography and motion picture film was recorded of this event, senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances should track down and utilize this evidence for future public hearings. Now, we just had congressional hearings Tuesday, basically. very recently. We just had this, but the problem we're running into is that the senators and congressmen in Washington, D.C., they don't have a high enough security clearance and they don't have a need to know. So how can they declassify something they've never been briefed on? That's the problem we're running into with these congressional hearings. Next case, UFO crash retrieval, 1947, seen at a warehouse at Berkeley University. Elbert Bruce Collins, he's no longer with us. He was a metallurgical engineer, page 197. He was at the right place at the right time when an 18-wheeler tractor trailer lowboy backed up into the warehouse at Berkeley University. I'm going to go to the next slide. This is Rudy's drawing. He said it literally looked like a cracked egg. It was 30 feet across, 15 feet high. Here you see our metallurgical engineer off to the left here. He's watching all this. And what he said was inside, there was a composite panel on the forward section of the craft itself. Then he said there was a 3-foot diameter central core or yoke inside the craft itself. Wrapped around the outer circumference of this interior sphere was another composite panel. And then he said on the bottom right of the craft, there was a hull breach, like there was an internal implosion, and there was debris and shrapnel sticking out of the bottom of the craft itself. Let's go to our full color rendering, and you can see that this is at a warehouse at Berkeley University. Let me go one more here, and just to kind of make this come alive, this is the best I could come up with based on the firsthand testimony of the metallurgical engineer. Next one, Carrot Patch, south of Salinas, California. This is July, August 1947, seen by 2 19-year-old workers in a nearby field. Now, when this craft came down, it was the foreman that saw it first. The next morning, when the 2 boys showed up for work, the foreman said, I've got something I want to show you. So he brought them over, these 2 19-year-old workers, to where this thing came down. And this is what they saw. This is the original sketch with the report. This is a 9-foot diameter dish-shaped craft, had a flat top. There was a double row of indented windows wrapped around the outer circumference. And there was a map that went with this case. So X marks the spot. If I could take you back in time to when this took place, I could probably get you within 200 feet of where this craft actually came down. Here's my AutoCAD drawing that shows you what the craft looks like. Not a large craft, 9 feet in diameter, 4 feet tall, flat top, double row of indented windows. Here was the first pass SolidWorks illustration just to give an idea what this thing looks like. Here's Rudy's drawing. So when the 19-year-old workers came up to this craft, one of them got up enough confidence to hit this with his boot. He made physical contact. Within 5 minutes, there was a convoy of military vehicles that showed up. There were 2 Jeeps. There was a 6x6 troop transport that was towing a trailer. Both 19-year-old workers were ordered to vacate the area, but they did see the military personnel manhandle this craft, loaded it onto the trailer. There was a tarp put on the top, and both 19-year-old workers watched the whole convoy leave the area. So they got a good look at the entire retrieval operation here. So here's our full color rendering. This gives you an idea of what this may have looked like. Let me take it to the next step here. And this was my final rendering just to preserve an important part of our national history here. So this is the $64 million question. Where are the top secret files on UFO crash retrievals being stored? I'm talking about the files here. According to one of Leonard's witnesses, they are kept in 3 large computer banks spread throughout the country. Number 1, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Dayton, Ohio. Number 2, CIA headquarters, Langley, Virginia. Number 3, NSA headquarters, Fort Meade, Maryland. And then this witness that Stringfield tracked down made this cryptic remark: they will bend in any direction to keep them secret. So we're really dealing with a very important topic within the United States government here. So now we want to talk about We just talked about the files. Where are the craft being stored? Same source mentioned NSA headquarters, Fort Meade, Maryland, MacDill Air Force Base, Tampa, Florida, Seymour Johnson Air Force Base, Goldsboro, North Carolina. So what they've done in the late 1940s, I would say through the 50s to the early 1960s, what they have done is they have diversified their portfolio. They have moved these assets around the country so they don't have a single point failure. So they've moved these to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Homestead Air Force Base, Edwards Air Force Base, North Complex. They've moved these all around the country. Next one, C-119 flying boxcar, Sierra Madre Valley, Mexico, prior to 1951. I believe this is 1948 timeframe. Our witness is an engineer who worked in highway construction. This is page 32 in the book. So here's the picture of the C-119. And we know the maximum diameter of this craft is 9 feet. It's a mathematical certainty because if you measure the interior wall thickness of the cargo bay of the C-119, it's 9 feet, 10 inches across. That allows for 5 inches of clearance on either side. So the craft can't be any bigger than 9 feet across. So here's Rudy's drawing. This shows you the United States military loading the craft into the clamshell bay doors of the C-119 cargo aircraft. Here's our full color rendering. This is by Joseph Wraith. Want to give him credit. So you can see the scene here. Now there were 3 bodies recovered. I'm going to do the blow up that shows you the loading process. So here's the craft being loaded into the back section of the C-119. Now, this engineer who worked in highway construction, he said that he got a real good close-up look at the bodies. He knelt down next to them. He put his fingers on their faces, and the skin came off onto his fingers. So they were badly burnt. So this was a quite gruesome scene, he said. But we have his testimony on file here. So let me see if we can make this a little more realistic. This is a 45-degree look-down view of the entire scene. We're going to zoom into this here. So we're zooming into the C-119 flying boxcar. I'm going to go to the next slide. This is about a 30-degree look-down angle at the scene. So you can see the retrieval operation is in full swing here. This is an eye level of the retrieval operation. You can see the craft being loaded into the C-119. Let me blow this up a little bit here. Get a little bit closer. This is about a 50-degree look-down angle. And then we'll go to one more scene with the bodies. Again, these things were very small. They have to be small to fit in a 9-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. So this comes from an engineer who was involved in highway construction. Now, next one. This came from our good friend, John Schuessler, who is the founder of MUFON. His father knew a guard who worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at the receiving gate. And anytime something came through Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, he had to review the manifest before he would let this convoy go through the gate. So we're talking about a credible witness here coming from John Schuessler. And John Schuessler's father was friends with this guard. And anything that had to go through Wright-Patterson Air Force came through this guard. And he said that back in 1952, he saw a tractor trailer with a dish-shaped craft covered by a tarp. And he was also aware of bodies packed in crates. This is page 10, abstract 3 in the book. So not only are we talking about craft, but bodies were recovered and were sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base back in 1952. So here's my best illustration that I could come up with. This gives you an idea of what this may have looked like at the receiving gate, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. 1952 at the Pentagon, off-limits room. This is our next case. The source is a Pentagon office worker, page 152 in the book. This is case 1. Now, this office worker, somehow she went down into a bottom basement at the Pentagon. So this was a dark room. There were some cardboard boxes off to the right. She went into this room and she kind of made a turn. And what did she see? She saw a large glass container containing a pickle alien in a glass jar. She could not believe what she was seeing. Within a matter of 5 seconds, there was a military guard that apprehended her, told her you're not supposed to be here, and escorted her out of the facility. Let me go to the next illustration. This kind of gives you an idea of what she saw. She said that was a pickle alien in a glass jar. She just was absolutely shocked at what she saw. I'm going to go to the next slide, and this gives you an idea of what she may have seen in an underground basement at the Pentagon. Now, I did some digging on this. I wanted to see if there was any truth to there being a basement facility where this could have happened. And I came across this document here. This is Peninsula Times Tribune, March 25th, 1989. New defense chief gets lost in the Pentagon basement. So Dick Cheney got lost in the Pentagon basement. He was at an upper floor of the Pentagon. The meeting was over. He went inside this elevator. He hit the wrong floor, thinking he was going to go to the carport. Well, he went one floor down into the basement, and he got lost in the basement. So this theoretically could have happened, and I just wanted to provide some kind of reference to back this up here. Let's go to the next one. Special note, something very serious appears to have been going on regarding UFO crash retrieval cases for the year 1953. So this date keeps on popping up again and again. 1953 keeps on popping up. Want to go to this case, Fort Polk, Louisiana, summer 1953. HJ is our source. He was a private in the Army. This is case A1, page 80. And this is our drawing of this case. Now, this is an egg-shaped craft that came down. It was 30 feet across. The witness said that when he got there, the ground was still warm to the touch. He was there from the very beginning to the end. This is 30 feet across. He also mentioned that there were medical personnel assisting ET bodies coming out of this craft. So you can see in the drawing here, the entryway hatch has 3 ETs walking out with the assistance of medical personnel. Now, one of the bodies was carried out on a stretcher, and there was some type of communication going on between the 3 that came out and the one that was carried off to the ambulance car. Now, these were about 3.5 to 4 feet tall. They had oversized heads, oversized eyes. They had a slit for a mouth. They had minute noses. They were all wearing a one-piece tight-fitting green flight suit. The report said they had mittens on. They were wearing helmets. And then he said one interesting thing. They did not have a knee joint like we do. They could only move their legs by the hips. So they had this very strange stepping across the ground as they were walking. Let me go to the next slide here. This gives you an idea of what this may have looked like with this retrieval operation. Let me zoom in a little bit here, and you can see the medical personnel assisting these ETs out of the craft itself. Again, about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, all wearing a one-piece tight-fitting green-colored flight suit. Here is their comrade being carried off into the ambulance truck. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. This gives you an idea of what this retrieval operation may have looked like. Now, what happened to the survivors? This is according to the witness who was there. According to the source, the survivors had been sent to a hospital and put into isolation, but all soon died. He also learned that the cadavers were sent to a medical center near Washington, D.C. Now, what is the medical center we're talking about here? It is Walter Reed Army Medical Center that closed back in 2011. We've got multiple military witnesses stating that the bodies were sent to this facility, but this wasn't the only one. There was another facility where these bodies were sent, and that's Johns Hopkins Hospital location of ET bodies. So within these 2 facilities, there were autopsies, there were tissue samples, there were x-rays technicians, absolutely according to the military witnesses. Okay, next one. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1953. Our source was in the Army Reserves. He was a warrant officer. This is page 15, abstract number 8. So this, again, this is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in 1953. Here is hangar complex number 4. Off to the right is Bay E. I believe it took place in this hangar. Let me go to the next slide. I've actually been inside this hangar, and this gives you a real good idea what it looks like on the exterior. Now, what he said happened is, this was at night. There was a 4-engine DC-7 that landed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It taxied up onto the tarmac, and then the DC-7 went inside this hangar. The hangar bay doors closed behind the aircraft. This gives you a good idea of what this looked like. Again, this is 1953. And then he said that there was a forklift that came over. There was a port aft cargo bay door that opened up, and this forklift started offloading these crates on these pallets. And he was at the right place at the right time when one of these pallets was lowered down, and he said that there were 3 wooden crates with the lids lifted off, and he looked inside the crates. What did he see? He said he saw 3 ET bodies that were deceased, and they were 3.5 to 4 feet tall. They were all wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit that was dark in color. They had oversized head, oversized eyes, slit for a mouth, minute nose. They were all being suspended off the bottom of the crates by a white netting to protect the bodies from the dry ice freezer burn below. So let me go to the next slide here, and this gives you a real good idea of what this may have looked like back at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I'm going to change the viewing perspective so we can have a look-down angle. This gives you a better perspective of what this looked like. Now, he also said that one of these ET bodies had breasts. That led him to believe that one was female. So he believed that one of these was female. Next one, Walker Air Force Base, New Mexico, April 12th, 1954. Our witness served in the Air Force as a photographer between 1954 and 1955. This is page 82 in the book. Now, Walker Air Force Base in New Mexico used to be home of the 509th Bomb Group. This is Roswell Army Airfield. So we're talking about the same location of the 1947 Roswell crash retrieval. Now, this guy, who was only 18 years old at the time, he was an expert in photography. He knew everything about lightings, shutter speed, aperture. This guy was a professional, and he just thought my skills might be valuable to the Air Force. Now, one day, he was told to board a Sikorsky H-19 helicopter. So he was with 2 other members of his team. They pile into this H-19 helicopter. Once they got in, there was a PA address system that had the following quote: "Men, this is not a drill. This is a red alert scramble." So they take off from Walker Air Force Base. They head northbound. They make a left-hand turn. They're heading northwest now toward Corona. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon. They go over a low-rise hill, and what do they see? They see a 50-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that came in at a 45-degree angle, and it had a dome on top. There was a series of lights wrapped around the outer circumference. There were 4 deceased ET bodies laying on the ground next to the craft itself. He was ordered to open up the bay door on the helicopter. There was a spotlight shining down on the scene, and he starts snapping photos of this scene hovering 40 feet above the craft itself. Now, when the helicopter landed, there were 2 things that became immediately apparent. Number one, the whole localized area was permeated with the smell of automobile battery acid. That's the first thing he recognized. Number 2, he saw lights in vehicles approaching. So he was at the very beginning of this retrieval operation. Let me go to the next slide here. This kind of gives you an idea of what this looks like. Now, in addition to the 4 bodies that were laying on the ground, he was told by the military personnel on the scene that there was an additional 2 bodies inside, for a grand total of 6 bodies retrieved in this 1954 operation. Here's my nighttime shot of what this may have looked like. I'm going to do another one during the day just to give you an idea of what this may have looked like during the daytime. But in this case, there were 6 bodies retrieved in this operation. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, in 1955, Mrs. G, who worked in the Foreign Materials Division. Information provided by Charles Wilhelm. This is page 17, abstract 12. So you can see that a lot of these cases were sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for a couple of good reasons. Number one, they had the Foreign Technology Division there, so they can test the tensile strength of these craft. And they have the Aeromedical Lab there, so they can examine the tissue samples. That's why, in many cases, these craft were sent to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So this is page 17, abstract 12. Now, this woman worked in this large warehouse where there's a lot of these crates. This is the environment that she worked in. This is warehouse building 258. Now, according to Mrs. G, she said that 1,000 components were processed, including items from the interior of a recovered UFO. So we're talking about 1,000 pieces from the interior of a UFO crash retrieval operation. This is just incredible. We always talk about hardware. Well, this woman saw the hardware firsthand. So I talked to my friend Rudy. I said, Rudy, you've got to give me this period correct office worker, and this is Mrs. G off to the lower right. And then I want you to populate this shelving with all of this ET debris. Now, she said that they had this thing set up like an assembly line. When the debris came in to the facility, they had a gentleman who took a photograph of it. That's what you see in the far right corner here. And then it moved to the next station where it was bagged and tagged. And then it moved to Mrs. G, where she cataloged it. Now, while all this is going on, she said that there was a mobile dolly that rolled right by her desk that contained 2 deceased ET corpses that were being preserved in this formaldehyde preservation fluid. So not only did she get to see the debris, but she saw the bodies. Now, just before she died, she made the following quote: Uncle Sam can't do anything to me once I'm in my grave. 6 months later, she died. We got her just in time. She's an American patriot. So let me go to the next slide here. And this gives you an idea of what this warehouse may have looked like. We're talking about 1,000 pieces from the interior of a crash retrieval coming from a reliable witness here. Actionable item. Since over 1,000 components of physical ET hardware exist, this evidence should be tracked down by senators and congressmen with the appropriate security clearances and should be presented in open public congressional hearings. This is something that needs to happen immediately here. Now, next one. December 1963, Cherry Point, North Carolina. This is my favorite case within the Stringfield collection. This is a U.S. Marine. This is page 152, case A2 within the book. So we're talking about December 1963. It's literally a couple of weeks after President Kennedy was assassinated at Daley Plaza on November 22nd, 1963. This is the map that shows you where this Marine base is. This is a little bit north of Havelock, Cherry Point, North Carolina. So this witness boards a plane with blacked out windows. They fly to an undisclosed location. He gets out of the airplane. They go to a hangar. Hangar bay doors opened up, and he sees a 15-foot diameter dish-shaped craft. It's about, it's 40 feet in diameter, 15 feet tall. It has opaque, elliptically shaped windows wrapped around the outer circumference. It has a very highly polished mirror exterior. There's no visible seams. There's no visible fasteners, no welds, no wings of any kind. He also said that there was the very faintest outline of a seam that you could not even put a razor blade in between the seams. It was so fully integrated into the skin of the craft. And then he said that there were lab coat technicians using diamond tip drill bits trying to pierce the exterior skin of this craft, and they couldn't do it. The whole craft was being propped up on scaffolding. Let me go to the next illustration here. This gives you a better idea of what this looks like. They were desperately trying to get into this craft here. These are the three attempts that they used. So number one, diamond tip drill bits, that failed. They could not get inside. Number two, acetylene cutting torch, that failed as well. Then they tried a laser, and that even failed. So they had three attempts to get in. All three attempts failed. What you're looking at here is the original sketch from the U.S. Marine who saw this craft. His job was to guard the craft for 2 weeks. So if you look on the upper left, upper right, there were lights shining down on this whole scene. It was excruciatingly well lit. There were no shadows on the ground. Window left of center line, you see this dot. That's the attempted point of entry with the diamond tip drill bits. Let's go to the next slide here. This is an original sketch by Michael Johnstone, and you can see it's a little bit cleaned up. Now, I also want to mention that there was a 1-inch lip between the outer exterior skin of the craft and the outer window, something that you could feel with your thumb. So there was a little bit of a lip there. So let me go to the cleaned up drawing here. So the scaffolding supporting this craft off the hangar floor was about 5 feet high. So you could walk below this craft. They had a catwalk built so that you could walk around this craft. This is all from white lab coat technicians. Directly below this craft, painted on the hangar floor, was a white circle. And our Marine, who was guarding this craft for 2 weeks, his job was to make sure that no one penetrated that white circle. On this blow-up view that I've done here, you can see this lip here. This was a 1-inch lip between the exterior skin and the outer windows themselves. So here's Joseph Race full color rendering. You can see the white lab coat technicians. You've got the catwalk here. I'm going to go to the next slide. This was our very first pass color illustration. So we've got, he wasn't the only guard there. There were also other guards there as well. We've got the scaffolding, we've got the catwalk, we've got the craft being supported, we've got the white circle painted on the floor. This was the very first pass illustration. So what I want to do now is I want to take you inside this facility and show you the craft at different angles here. So we've already penetrated the chain link fence. We're going to continue to zoom in here to the scene. This is about an eye level view. You can see the craft. You've got the scaffolding. You've got the military personnel. If you look close, you can see the white circle painted on the floor. This is a little bit of a blow up. Now, in addition to the lab coat technicians and the military personnel, he said that there were CIA type personnel wearing suits. So the intelligence community is involved now as well. Let's go again here. This is a little bit closer. You can see here the 1-inch lip that was wrapped around these opaque elliptical windows, and then the attempts with the diamond tip drill bit to get inside. This is a 45-degree look down angle on the scene. You've got the white painted circle. I'm going to move to the next slide here. Now, the last day that he was there, our Marine said that he watched as the craft was being moved off the scaffolding. It was put on a cradle device. They were putting a tarp over the craft itself and then getting ready to ship it out. So let me go to the next slide here. This shows you the beginning of this cradle that they built around this craft, and they're going to start putting a tarp over it. This is the tarp. This is about 50% tarp right now. This is about 100% tarp, and then they're moving this craft out of the hangar facility. So the two ways that they keep this secret from the world is, number one, they compartmentalize this information. Number two, they move these assets from one location to the next, so they don't have a single point failure. They have diversified their portfolio. That's how they've done this. I mean, these guys are geniuses. That's how they've been able to keep this under wraps all this time. This was Rudy's first pass drawing, just to give you an idea of what this scene may have looked like. Now, back to this incident with the laser. When the diamond tip drill bits failed and the acetylene cutting torches failed, they brought in a laser They did have lasers back in 1963. They had this tractor trailer with a large electrical device on it. They brought in these heavy gauge cables. They connected the cables to the laser. They turned the laser on. It struck the side of the craft, bounced up, reflected, and damaged the ceiling tile. That's what happened. When they moved the laser away, it was warm to the touch, but had no effect whatsoever on the craft itself. So here you see the damage to the ceiling tile. And this is from the first-hand U.S. Marine who was there that guarded this craft for 2 weeks. Here's his original drawing of what the laser incident looked like. And then he also mentioned something very interesting. He said that the lab coat technicians that were working on this craft, they all had color-coded badges. So if you had a green badge, you could go to this part of the facility. If you had a yellow badge, you had access to this part. If you had a red badge, you had complete access to the whole facility. So this is something to consider, this color-coded badges. Now, one time he was left alone in the hangar with the craft itself, and he took a small Minox camera and he took a shot of this thing. He actually took a photograph of this. However, I'm going to go to his quote here. He says, "Someday I will tell the story, and by God, people are going to believe me." That photograph was lost in a flood back in 1983. So we were this close of getting an actual photograph of what this scene may have looked like. So I came to my good friend Joseph Wraith and I said, "Joseph, can you do a replica of what this photograph may have looked like?" And this is what he came up with here. So this would be a Minox camera replica based on the testimony of the U.S. Marine. So it would be blurry. It would be kind of gray tones. There might be some water damage here, some staining, but something like this was shot by this U.S. Marine back in 1963. Also want to mention that there was a United States Secretary of the Navy who tried to breach that circle that was painted on the ground on the hangar floor. And looking at the dates, it would have been this person right here, Paul Nitz. This guy was almost shot for going across that line. He almost got shot. So the dates check out. It would have been this gentleman right here. Now I want to bring your attention to this person right here. This is 4-star Major General Melvin F. McNichol. He was Base Commander, Tinker Air Force Base. This is his obituary. The Daily Oklahoma, July 11th, 1986. It says, "Ex-Tinker Commander Melvin McNichol dies." So just providing that this is a real person here. Now, he was very good friends with Charlotte Mann, who's pictured off to the left here. They were very good friends for years. They both had an interest in UFOs. However, this Marine, Melvin McNichol, he really didn't tell Charlotte Mann anything that he knew. And so Charlotte turned to the general and says, "General, are we still friends here? You've really never told me anything. Are we still friends?" And McNichol came back to Charlotte Mann and said, "Charlotte, if you ever repeat what I'm about to tell you, it could ruin my career, and I'll deny it." He told Charlotte Mann the following things. Number one, he saw a UFO which was located in the west. Number two, he walked around a UFO on a catwalk which was propped up by scaffolding. And number three, bodies were recovered and one was still alive. Now, when I heard this from Charlotte Mann at the International UFO Congress, it's been 7 years now, I said, "I've got it now. I've got it." Because I now have a secondary independent source that confirms what the U.S. Marine said. So he said that he saw a UFO that was located in the west. That tracks with the Marine because he flew 3 hours by plane from Cherry Point, North Carolina. That would put you within the west. And then the general said that he walked around a UFO on a catwalk propped up by scaffolding. This is exactly what the Marine said. The Marine said that the craft was propped up by scaffolding and they had a catwalk. The general said that bodies were recovered, one was still alive. Our Marine at this undisclosed location overheard water cooler talk by the lab coat technicians about bodies being recovered, one was still alive. So when I heard this from Charlotte, man, I said, now I've got a real case here, something from a secondary witness. Okay, I think we got time for a couple more here. This is Southwest, July 3rd, 1967. Our source is a Marine ranked private first class, page 86, case A5. And what we have here is this Marine was sent to what we believe to be Phoenix, Arizona, somewhere near Arizona. Could have been the Southwest. We don't know exactly for sure, but it was definitely in the West, the Southwest. He was told to guard a Quonset style fabricated hangar. By day 3, he got very curious. So he walked up to this hangar. He pulled open the flaps showing the interior, and he said that he saw a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft that was being guarded by military personnel. He also said that there were white lab coat technicians with lab benches with metallurgical testing equipment. So there were calipers, there were micrometers. He also said that there was a walk-in freezer with body bags. He did not see any bodies, but he did see the body bags. I'm going to go to the next slide here, and this gives you an idea of what this may have looked like back in 1967 time frame, probably Arizona. So let's make this come alive a little bit here. And this was my final rendering to give you an idea of what this may have looked like. So they're definitely testing the tensile strength of these vehicles here. Norton Air Force Base, 1973, Air Force photographer. This is page 160, case 14. So this was a photographer who was based in Hawaii. He was flown to Norton Air Force Base. He was joined by another photographer. They go inside an Air Force car. They drive 1 hour from Norton Air Force Base. The car stops. The car drops down into an underground facility. They both get out, are told to change into clean room smocks. So now they're in this clean room environment, essentially wearing these smocks here. And what they saw was a 30-foot diameter dish-shaped craft supported by a crane. And their job was to photograph the interior of this vehicle. Now, once they got inside the craft, and this is the direct quote, I could have thrown a football as hard as I could and still not hit the other side. So it appeared that it was 10 times larger on the inside than it was on the exterior. So you can see on the upper left, the blow-up view shows you this cavernous interior. And then they were told to photograph the autopsy of 2 ETs. I'm going to go to the next slide. So this gives you an idea of what this may have looked like. Now, this thing is only 30 feet in diameter, but when you get inside, it looks 10 times bigger, like you could throw a football as hard as you could. So there's some type of space-time continuum going on within the interior here. This is a little bit of a blow up. This shows you what this may have looked like. I'm going to go to the next slide. This is the interior of the craft. So something like this was seen by 2 Air Force photographers 1 hour from Norton Air Force Base. Here is the view looking down on the scene with the autopsies here. And so what I've wanted to do in this presentation is just give you a brief overview of some of the mission critical UFO crash retrieval cases. And these are from firsthand military witnesses who loaded the craft, who were involved in the autopsies, X-ray technicians. And the whole goal of this is to preserve an important part of our national history and make these cases come alive. And this information really does need to go to Congress so that we can move this field forward. And I want to thank you for your attention. I'll stop sharing right now. Okay.
Thank you, Michael, for that. We could have gone on a bit longer, but if is there a part 2? Could you have gone on a bit longer?
I suppose there's, probably another hour and a half of cases, but just want to provide you some of the most mission critical cases. Yep.
So if you don't mind, if you got another 5 minutes where we can go through some questions, I'd like to ask you a question.
Yeah, that's fine. No problem. No problem.
I'm going to start with my question then. Recently, there's been this new image from Area 51. Have you got any information on that, or whether that could be credible?
Are you talking about the Roswell?
The Roswell, yeah. What did I say?
Yeah. You know what? I've looked at that. I'm not convinced that represents what the witnesses saw, because the 509th Bomb Group witnesses, what they stated that they saw was a 13-foot long egg-shaped escape pod. That's what they claim they saw. What we see in this image is debris that almost has a sharp, long edge, almost like a triangle. So right now, it's not tracking with the firsthand military witnesses from the 509th Bomb Group. It was literally an egg-shaped escape pod with a hull breach that was the size of a Volkswagen. That's according to the 509th Bomb Group witnesses.
Thank you for that. Anybody on the panel got a question for Michael?
I've got one question. So with many of these retrievals, when the interior of the craft is described, there's no toilet, there's no bedding.
That's
Are
right.
some of these retrievals sent to Earth for a one-way trip, maybe as gifts for humanity? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we have heard the term hand-me-downs. That's something that we've heard of before. And a lot of these craft appear to be unmanned. And if they are manned, they are manned by drones. These are antiseptically sterile drones. They're basically cut out like cookie cutters. So these could be throwaways, these could be hand-me-downs, and these are not interstellar craft, but they're scout ships. So what's crashing are not the motherships, but it's the scout ships that are crashing. That's what's happening here.
Thank you.
Any
Anyone else?
questions before I go to people in the comments section?
Michael,
Yeah.
sorry, Dan. Do you have any idea where, what sort of planets or star systems these craft are coming from?
Very good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but it's very clear at this point that a lot of these vehicles are being targeted, tracked, and shot down by a rogue group within the military-industrial complex to exploit the propulsion system and weapons system advancement. This is going on for decades within the military-industrial complex. That appears to be what's going on here.
Brilliant. Thanks for that.
Yep. Mhm.
Hi, Michael.
Yeah.
UFO anomaly. You just briefly touched on the size of the craft, because as you were going through your presentation there, I noticed there were quite varying sizes. I mean, the last bit that you actually showed us, I thought was really interesting, because obviously to see a concept of a craft that basically has some sort of space-time continuum thing,
Mhm.
where it's like Doctor Who's TARDIS inside. I mean,
Right.
you know, obviously not every craft is like a probe of sorts. That was still quite a decent sized craft by all accounts. But do you still think that's a shuttle? Or could that be an interdimensional craft with a much longer range capability, or quite the opposite?
It's very possible. Now, there are a couple of cases where the witnesses said that the interior of the craft appeared to be absolutely much larger on the inside than it was on the outside. So it's not completely unprecedented. It's not that common. It's a little bit rare, but there's probably 3 or 4 of these cases where the craft appear to be bigger on the inside. So we could be talking about a gravity well, a gravity distortion associated with the propulsion system. That may be the cause and effect of why these witnesses are looking at the interior, which is literally 10 times bigger on the interior. So some type of gravity well might be associated.
Fascinating.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Or a few more from the comments?
Yeah, I think Dan might have one. Dan, have you got a question?
Yeah, the illustrations in your pictures,
Yes.
they looked very familiar, very similar crafts in each one. With the witnesses that you've spoken to, have they mentioned that the beings that they came across all were sort of the same, or have they mentioned that they were sort of more than one different type of species that were operating these crafts?
It's a good question. It's a good question. It appears that they have very similar features. These things are described as 3.5 to 4 feet tall. They have an oversized head. They have oversized eyes. They have a slit for a mouth. They have a minute nose. They appear to be wearing a one-piece tight-fitting flight suit. Now, regarding the flight suits, these flight suits almost appear to be fully integrated into their skin. It's like it's one unit. That's how integrated these flight suits are. That's something that comes up multiple times, but generally, this same concept of these 3.5 to 4 feet tall beings are very similar features.
Thank you.
Yep.
Matt, any questions in the comments?
There's
Couple.
one question here. Do you know of any stories of the military trying to shoot the crafts down, but they resist?
But they resist. Good question. Good question. What appears to be happening is they're using piggybacked radar systems, using scalar waves, using directed energy weapons. Difficult to say. Difficult to say. I don't have any things where they fought back or anything like that, but that's a very good question. I don't know if I can answer that.
Someone's asking here, thoughts on these aliens being angels and demons?
I've thought about that as well. And the reason why is because whatever or whoever these UFOs are, number one, they're tricksters because they can come and go as they please. They can materialize and dematerialize as they please. They've been seen going into oceans and then popping right out. So they can go from one medium to the next and no problem. They've also been seen going right into the side of mountains with no impact. So we're not necessarily talking about a physical entity here. We could be talking about something interdimensional. We could be talking about something extratemporal, which is from our future. You've got the USOs. You've got a previously unknown high-tech civilization. So I don't think the answer is just one thing, but there could be an angelic spiritual component to this phenomenon.
Interesting. Have you come across any crashes that are like a mothership, a huge ship, maybe one that had a
The
building
only
built
one
over
that
it?
I know of, which is very large in size, is the one at White Sands Missile Range that was 150 feet in diameter. That's the largest one. And in some cases, we've heard this before, when these craft are so large, they bury them on site. That's happened more than once.
Do you know anything about what Ross Coulthard said a couple of years back?
Yeah, I've heard about that too. And he's very tight-lipped about his sources.
Do you think you might
And
know where that is?
yeah, I think there was one in Indonesia, I believe, but beyond that, I don't know where a second one is. It's on foreign soil. It's not in the US.
Interesting. So I want to ask you as well, are you on TikTok?
Am I on TikTok? I used to have a TikTok account. I think it's still there, but I'm not really active on there. I'm more active on YouTube.
Yeah, so you've got a YouTube. What's your YouTube account called?
It's called Michael Schratt. That's
Michael
it.
Schratt. Nice and simple. Let's
Yep.
not make it difficult. Why don't you get booming on TikTok as well? We can absolutely help you get some followers, and you can do
Yeah,
live
man.
chats like
I
this
might go
regular.
back on. Yeah, I might go back on. Yeah,
And
that'd be
we could
good.
have a part 2, and that could be on TikTok.
Sure,
Yeah, some point.
sure.
That'd be a good
That'd be
idea, I
fine.
think, because I think it'd be an asset to the community that we created over here. And we're all friendly people, and we've got
Yeah.
quite a lot of Brits involved here as well. I'm sure you'd like to get speaking to us over this side of the pond, right?
That's nice. That's great.
It's
And we're all a
it's not-
family here. We're
Yeah, we
all
are all
fighting
family,
for the
you're right. And I
truth.
think
Yeah, we're all a family.
so you let us know which account you want us to share on TikTok, and we'll help you get the followers, and then we'll
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
we'll rebook you in for a part 2, Michael. That's what I think.
No problem. No problem.
It's been great listening to you. I can't wait for part 2. Go into the.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got a lot more stuff to
Yeah.
talk about, and I'm sure a lot
Glad
more
to
stuff
do
will
it.
come out.
Glad to do it. Yes.
Is there anything you want to shout out? Any events? Any things you're doing that you want to let people know? Before you go?
I guess the only thing I would shout out is I've got 2 books. One's on Amazon, and it's basically called Dark Files, A Pictorial History of Lost, Forgotten, and Obscure UFO Encounters. So that's book number 1. Book number 2 is called Disclosure and Illustrated History. So these are the 2 publications, plus my YouTube channel, and that's basically it.
Thank you.
I have a quick question before you go.
Yeah.
You told us about his historic incidents that
Right.
obviously are very, very interesting. Are you working on anything at the moment that is, well, through the roof and almost in present sort of timeline where we are now?
Okay. Best way to answer that is I just got back from New Mexico. I spent 4 months in New Mexico. scanning documents at the National UFO Historical Record Center. And right now, that center has essentially the largest collection of UFO material in the United States. So they've got the largest collection of files, case reports, newspaper clippings, documents, motion picture film reels, CDs, DVDs, VHS tapes. So it's a collection from all around the United States into one location. And they also have procured the APRO files, the Aerial Phenomenon Research Organization. It's the oldest UFO organization in the United States. They started in 1952. They ceased operations in late 1989. So from 1989 to 2023, all of those files were completely locked in a vault. No one was allowed to look at them at all. So I just got back from scanning in the best of the best of the best of that collection. I am doing full color illustrations of all of the best cases and putting them into a massive PowerPoint presentation that will give us a complete cross section of these sightings from the time of the ancient Egyptians up to 2025. That's what I'm working on right now.
4.5 months that you spent away, were you hiding from your wife?
No, I wish I was, but nope. No wife here.
I just ask one more question,
Okay.
as well, Michael. You've obviously done a lot of study and spoken to a lot of first-hand witnesses. Why do you think none of these witnesses are part of the current disclosure at the moment?
Yeah, because here's the thing. I wonder if these so-called whistleblowers are actually whistleblowers, because they have to get authorized by the Department of Defense. They've got to get cleared from the Pentagon first. So are they actual whistleblowers? What we need are these legacy Stringfield witnesses. These are the people who retrieved these craft in the early 1950s, these legacy witnesses, and they're passing away very quickly. There's not many of these people left. Like almost all of the cases that we talked about today, almost all these people are gone already. We've got to track down these remaining witnesses before it's too late. That's why these people need to be going to Congress and having hearings. That's what needs to happen.
Totally agree. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. Right, we'll let you go, Michael. Thank you for coming. I don't know what time it is there, but it's only 4 p.m. here. But yeah, we'll get you on for a part 2. Shiv,
Sounds good.
chase him up for a TikTok and we'll get him sorted out there. And we'll
Great.
get part 2 going. Right. Thank you all, folks. I will see you on the next one. Michael, we'll upload it tomorrow or it'll be Sunday, and we'll add your books to it and stuff. So everything, it'll all be sorted for you anyway, mate.
Sounds good. Okay.
No worries, pal. Take care. Good night.
Very much.